Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Daly. I spent 20 years with United Press International, most of it with the old UPI Radio Network. And my favorite assignment was going on the road producing and hosting American Montage. It was an hour-long weekly program. Now here's an edited version of one of those shows. From right after World War II until the end of the run, Fred Foy was the announcer for the Lone Ranger in a style no one can forget.
Finally, the Texas Rangers learned where Butch Cavendish and his gang were hiding.
In many ways, the legendary Fred Foy was as important to the Lone Ranger program as was the star Brace Beamer or any other member of the cast. Today, Fred Foy lives in semi-retirement in the Boston area. He tells me the world needs to return to a time when heroes, such as the Lone Ranger, were looked up to.
Here is the picture of the stalwart masked man, his Indian companion who actually saved his life in the ambush at Bryant's Gap. And it's that marvelous combination of the hero who fights for good and for justice, and that has certainly been one of the factors that have been the reason for its popularity. I mean, when I was with the show, I remember so many scripts that dealt with some of the historical figures out of history that with the Lone Ranger involved in some of their situations. But it's something that is missing today, I think. We need more heroes like that masked man.
You were telling me before going on the air that here was a man who was not just an actor, but Brace Beamer, in a way, lived the part of the Lone Ranger.
Oh, yes. Brace actually was a great outdoorsman. He had a farm. We sometimes refer to it as his ranch out in Oxford, Michigan. And he bred horses. He was an outdoorsman, and at his ranch he kept Silver and Scout in the stable out there. And he was an all-around. He was a great rider, and also he knew how to handle the 6 guns and rifles and whatever. And he was a handsome, tall, good-looking gentleman, and he fit the role, even though it wasn't a visual role at the time. And, of course, he had the voice that really brought that character to life.
He had such a reassuring, my voice isn't low enough to do it, but this calm, wonderful voice, and never really shot at anybody. He would shoot the gun out of their hand. He was not a nasty good guy.
That's right. No, he would always, either the gun would fly out of the hand, or he would maybe graze their shoulder, but never killed anyone. Never shot to kill anyone. And even in the episode where you recall it all began with Butch Cavendish and his outlaw gang. And
why don't you go through and tell us how the character was born?
Well, in the episode that brings the Lone Ranger to life, to make it brief, there's a group of Texas Rangers, and they are trailing Butch Cavendish and his gang of outlaws. And they send a scout ahead who tells them, we must go through the canyon, and they are camped on the other side and whatever, and we can deal with them there. So the leader says, fine, the Rangers will go through. And in the meantime, of course, as they approach and go through Bryant's Gap, the outlaws are on either side of the canyon, ready to ambush all of the Rangers as they go forth. This happens, they're ambushed, and they leave all Rangers to be dead. Then they ride away, and now dusk arrives, and an Indian riding through suddenly sees the massacre and walks through, and suddenly finds that one man is still alive. So he takes the Ranger and takes him to his cave and nurses him back to health.
Are you awake? Me glad. Yes, but so weak. You wounded bad. I remember an ambush. That right? There were 6 of us in that canyon. The others. What about the other Rangers? Other ranger, all dead.
Dead.
Ah,
One was my brother.
you only ranger left. You, Lone Ranger.
The companionship began there between the two, and they went out to hunt down the Cavendish gang. Eventually, they do come, they get the gang, and Butch Cavendish goes to jail. And then in the 20th anniversary episode, which is a beautiful episode, it covers all of the beginnings of how he became the Lone Ranger. And then he's talking to his nephew, Dan Reed, telling him all that has happened previously. And they are sort of on a little ride into the outlands when suddenly there are rifle shots and they're attacked. And it turns out, of course, that it's Butch Cavendish who has escaped from jail and is now out to get the Ranger. To make a long story short again, they finally confront each other, and there's a tremendous fight on a hillside. And in the fight, finally, Butch Cavendish goes over the cliff, and Tonto and the Ranger go down to where he has fallen, and they find that he's still alive. And the scene, the Ranger is talking to him, and he says, "I want you to know who found you." And he said, the first time the Ranger takes his mask off, and Cavendish says, you, and so on, and then he knows who his champion of justice was.
The outlaws waited and watched for any sign of life from the Rangers, then rode away, convinced that all 6 men in Bryant's Gap were dead.
Then my name shall be forever buried with my brother and my friends. From now on, my face must be concealed. That's it. A mask. I'm the only one who knows about the Cavendish gang. With your help, Tonto, I'll get every one of those crooks.
What does it feel like for you when someone comes up to you, maybe even a small child, 2 generations away from what we refer to as the golden age of radio, and realize who you are, and that sound that epitomizes much of that era? What does it feel like for you to almost have a third career now based upon people's memories of all of this?
Well, it's very rewarding, believe me, and it's humbling, and it's in a way it's hard to believe. As I said, we thought that we were just doing a show and a job on the air, and then to later find out it's become part of legend. That it's really then you feel how fortunate you were to have been a part of it, and all the people that were involved in it. It just was a wonderful time, and I really feel quite humble when I find out that people think that much of the show and my part in it.
I don't think there are 3 people in the English-speaking world probably who haven't heard your voice at least once.
Well, Dennis, thanks a million. I appreciate it, and well, I hope to be going on for quite a while yet.
In the Ranger's eyes, there was a light that must have burned in the eyes of knights in armor. A light that through the ages lifted the souls of strong men who fought for justice, for God.
I'll be the Lone Ranger.
You know, there aren't many gentlemen left around, but one of them is Fred Foy. And there you have it, another edited episode of one of the American Montage programs prepared for the UPI Radio Network back in the 1980s and 90s. I'm Dennis Daly. Thanks for listening. Thanks for going with me this week. And check YouTube for more American Montage programs.